Hey there, let's begin Unit 4. And this is about animation simulating. We're building some games now. We've been talking about this all year. Now it's time to get busy with it. So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to go to 4.2. You'll see it's great. It'll show up by tomorrow in class. But anyway, when it does pop in, you'll see we have this thing that says sign in to Google's account. That's actually the template. So you're going to launch the part one template. It's going to come in here and it'll come up on mine, and it will say it already exists. That's okay because it does already exist on mine. That's okay. I've got it right here, and it already exists. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to save as, save project as, and I'm going to call it turn off lights part one. So it's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to get that done. And it'll open it up. And then just to save us some time, I'm going to start the emulator. You should, while I'm starting the emulator, you should on your get going with connecting your tablet, your Android device, which I have right here. But I'm going to use the emulator because when I'm doing a demonstration, it's actually a little bit easier to see. Meantime, I've got two other things. Flipgrid's where you're going to turn it in. You know how Flipgrid works. And then right here, I've got the tutorial. I've got the this is how it works part. Let me turn these out. This is exactly how it works. This is what to do. You read this and you can follow the directions. If you don't want to watch my video, you've got this in directions. And if you want this in Spanish or in any other language, you can go to here where it says translate document. You can actually get it into any language that Google Translate will do. And there's a couple hundred in there. So I'm hoping you'll be able to find one that works for you. So let's get started on what we're going to do. And I am, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to move that sheet to the other place. And yes, I am following that sheet. I do believe in that. I will show you what's going on. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to be making a whack-a-mole game. Let's go over to it. I'm not going to update the emulator now. Let me show you that emulator. Sorry, right over to it. The emulator is booting up, and that's normal for how it works. I want to make sure it works, so I'm going to, for sake of argument, throw in a button. And yes, the button showed up. So I'll move the button over here. I'll bring that back in when we need it. I'm going to get rid of the button. That's just a way of confirming that it works. What are we going to build? We're going to actually build this whole mess. We're going to build this whole picture right in here, the canvas and this light's going to dance around. So we're going to figure out how that works. And that'll be kind of fun. Now let's begin by putting together the screen component. If you don't know what I'm putting together, I'm following along right in here where I'm going through the screen components. I'm following that list. So you open that list up in a separate screen, you follow that list. If you don't want to follow along with me, that's okay. But I'm going to keep my emulator open. It's going to be open right here. I'm going to have App Inventor open here, and I'm going to work in it. But as soon as I click on this, the emulator it disappears. I'm going to put the emulator on the other screen while I work. And in the meantime, the first thing it says is I'm going to change the screen name to the app name to turn out lights. So what it's telling me to do, let me go up to here, and it's telling me the app name. It says turn off lights part one. I'm just going to change it to turn off lights. Okay. And that's what we're going to do. And they've got some other things in here. Title, turn off the lights. And where did I get that direction? I got that direction by following this right here. It says screen, app name, turn out lights, title, turn out the lights. Then it says get a vertical arrangement and do fill parent height, fill parent width. So let's go in and do that. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to get myself let me make sure I'm still seeing it right. I'm going to get myself a vertical arrangement. So I'm going to go over here to layout, and I'm going to bring in a vertical arrangement. We're used to using horizontal arrangements, which push things side by side or horizontally. I'm doing the vertical arrangement, which is up and down. And it says height, fill parent. It says width, fill parent. So far, so good. Feel free to stop anytime you need to get that done. I'm just going to keep pushing ahead. The next direction, and you're probably reading this on your own by now, it says we're going to get a canvas on this. So where the heck is the canvas? Well, it's in the drawing and animation drawer. How do I know that? It actually says drawing and animation drawer, get a canvas right here, right? So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to get that because this is the last one of these I'm going to do with these tutorials for a while. I want you to be able to do this on your own. The idea is for you to be able to do this without me. But for now, I'll just do it with you one at a time. And you're going to get really used to this. And after a while, I'm looking for you to be able to say, Mr. Trish, we're kind of sick of following the one by ones. We can just follow the directions. We're really good. I really want you to get to that point. I want you to get to the point where you're saying to me, Mr. Tush, you don't need to do this for us because we're independent, we're powerful. That's what we're looking for. So stay with me until you're ready to tell me to take a hike. Now, canvas. It says it's in drawing and animation, and this thing called a canvas. I'm going to put it on there. And the dimensions it's telling me to do is height and width, fill parent. So I'm going to go here, height, fill parent, which automatically fills the screen it's in. Width, fill parent, and again, it automatically fills the screen it's in. And although the directions don't tell me this, I'm going to tell you that with my vertical arrangement, I learned a long time ago, it's easier if the horizontal arrangement is centered. You can't really see it, but it'll matter in a minute. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the background image of the kitchen picture. So what's going to happen when I put in the background image, so I go over here to the background, the image right here, and I pick the kitchen island, right? I put it in, and in it comes, or at least we hope it comes. Whoops, that was a mistake. That is not where I wanted to put the image. You see where I put the image is in the vertical arrangement. That's not what we want. I want the image in the canvas. So I'll put the background image in the canvas, and there we go. That looks right. And just so you know, this is how it looks in my emulator. It's roughly how it should look on your screen. So it's looking like it's supposed to so far. Now, we're going to add one more label. This is all a part of what's called user interface design. Remember, one of the things you want to do with your apps is you have to design it so the person using it doesn't have to read directions. It can kind of look at it and intuit what they're supposed to do. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put in a label. It tells me to put in a label. And I'm going to go over here to user interface. I'm going to grab a label and I'm going to put it at the bottom. You notice that it adjusted for it. And it says text for label 1. You see where it says text for label 1? So that's kind of cool, huh? So I'm going to go down here where it says text for label 1, and it tells me to put in help save electricity. So I'm going to put in that, and boom, there it goes. How cool is that? So we're liking that. Now, the next thing it wants me to do is something called an image sprite. Now, this is under the drawing and animation drawer. How do I know that? Because I'm reading the directions where it says drawing and animation image sprite. This is a special tool, and we're going to kind of discover it together. So I'm going to go down to the image and drawing and animation drawer right here. You see where it's there? That was accident. I went to Mindstorm. Here it is, drawing and animation to this image sprite. I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to put it right in there. And I've got a reason to put it right in there. I could put it here, but they get harder to see in other places. Just trust me when I tell you, put it in the upper left-hand corner. It's going to be easier to see in a little bit, easier to work with. And I'm going to rename this thing. We're going to call it light bulb sprite. So light bulb sprite. It's going to be important to do that because when you do the next exercise, when you're developing things on your own, you are going to need to label things in a meaningful way. It's one of the things you're always working on. Now, when I look at my emulator, you're saying, oh, this little square isn't there. You're right. That's a placeholder because it doesn't have an image. An image sprite literally takes an image and treats it like an object. So you can play with it inside your program. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in as a backdrop to this where I go to picture right here. You see right this? And I'm going to have this thing called lightbulb.jpg. And holy moly, will you look at that? Maybe that's a mistake and it doesn't show up on the app. No, it shows up on the app. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to change the width and height. Unfortunately, the directions tell you change the height and width to 50 pixels, right? So you just go ahead and do that. Now, how do you do that? You go over here to height, where it says pixels. And pixels are pixel elements, those little blocks that make up an image. We learned that in Unit 3. I'm going to change the height to 50 pixels. I'm going to change the width to 50 pixels. And hopefully, look at that. And I've got myself a little sprite right here. And that's a little sprite right here. Now, we are building a whack-a-mole type of game, which means we got to have this thing move around the screen somehow or another. And I wonder what that's all about. And we got to have something happen. Well, we need 2 more elements to put in. And I'm just going to follow my direction. I'm going to need you to have that open on your own because I don't want to keep switching back and forth. I'm going to put in a media sound thing and a sensors clock thing. And I don't have to really do a lot of crazy stuff with naming, but the media and the sound piece is down in media. So I'm going over to media and I'm going to pull in a sound player. And you'll note, wait, I see it here, but it's down here. Remember, it's a non-visible component. Just like a lot of sounds, they tend to be non-visible. They do things that are important and you have to program for them, but they're not visible. And we're going to learn one more new unit today, which is in the sensors, and it's something called a clock. Clocks are cool because clocks are going to enable you to do fun things with your games. So I'm going to drop in my clock, and the clock is going to be there. And it did tell me to change my clock timer interval to 1,000, and it did tell me to put my sound source as the beep. Remember, if you put in a sound, you have to connect it to a source in order to be able to make that sound play. If you put in a clock, you have to set that clock to a particular sound, or or to a particular millisecond, or it won't click right. All right. That's what a clock is. A clock isn't like the clock on your wall. A clock is something that fires at a certain interval. And the sound doesn't matter how the sound minimum interval is, but when you go to a clock, the timer interval is 1,000 milliseconds. 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. All right. A milli something is a thousandth of something, right? So a millimeter is actually a millimeter is a tenth of a meter. But anyway, most of the time when you see the word milli, it's a thousandth of something. So a millimeter or millisecond is a thousandth of a second. So let's go over to coding the app. Now, first thing we got to do is we got to figure out what to do with this clock, because we got to have the clock timer do stuff. When the clock does, as soon as the clock gets going, and I'm going to make sure the clock is ready to rock because the timer is enabled. That clock is just going fire, 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 fire. Every 1 second, it's going go, go, go. Here's the problem. I didn't tell it to do anything. So it's sitting there saying, second, there's another second, there's another second, there's another second, but it's not doing anything with my seconds. So I'm going to tell it to do stuff with my second. So let's go over to my clock. And it says when the clock on timer. In other words, when the timer fires, that's what it's going to do. I'm going to actually tell the light bulb to do something. This will be kind of fun. Well, at least I hope it will be. All right. So I'm going to get this over here to the left. Nice and neat code. And we are going to go to, we're going to take a look at the light bulb right here, the light bulb sprite. And I'm going to pull this cool thing called Move To. Move To is kind of a neat thing. Sprites are a neat little element because it allows you to put a picture in the middle of a screen that does stuff. And this is going to be one of the things that does stuff. So we're going to take this light bulb sprite, we're going to stick it right there in the middle. And I'm going to get an error in just a second. Don't worry about it. It's saying the arguments are the wrong number of arguments for Move To. Well, what do you mean the wrong number of arguments? Well, let me take a look at this. It'll come back in a second, but you see where it says X and Y, Move To X and Move To Y. X and Y are the arguments. The light bulb sprite is asking me, what does Move To mean? So I'm just going to do me a favor and pull that out so I stop getting that error, right? And it's saying, I don't have anything right here in X and Y. It's looking for something. And generally speaking, if you get that warning, you're looking for either you put the wrong thing in here or you didn't put something in there. That's what that's telling you. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go grab this. I'm going to grab, just for argument's sake, I'm going to grab 100, put in 100, right? And I will dupe it. I'll put it in here as well. All right. Now what'll happen is I'll put it in and it will run and you're going to stop getting that error. At least I hope you are. You should stop getting an error. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show you. And wait, it's not moving. Of course it's not moving because the clock is every second saying move to X100, Y100. What do you mean X and Y? Do you remember when we did some games in Scratch? If you remember when you did games in Scratch and you had to move sprites around the stage, you were always telling it to do things in coordinates, X coordinates and Y coordinates. Remember, X was always the horizontal coordinate went across the screen. Y went up and down like a yo-yo. And so the Y coordinate is the vertical coordinate. The X coordinate is the horizontal coordinate. And right now I'm saying every second, go to 100 by 100, which happens to be there. I will, for argument's sake, change it to 50-50. By the time I come back, there it's a second later, just jump to 50-50 because that's what it is. Little heads up, normally in a canvas, in other apps, the canvas 0 is in the middle and positive and negative and then positive and negative, right? The 0 is normally in the middle. App Inventor is a little weird. The canvas 0 is here in the upper left-hand corner. So it's plus and it's minus. It's just a little goofy that way, but that's where the canvas goes. So the upper left-hand corner. So the next thing that's going to happen, and it goes up going this way. Goes up going that way. 0 to whatever, it's like 300, 0 to 100, and 0 to about 100 going this way. That's the way it works in App Inventor. It's different from Sprite. I actually don't like that very much, but it's the programming environment you have to deal with, so just kind of deal with it. So the first thing I've done is I've told it to go there. But what if I want it to randomize? Well, I don't know if you remember this, but I had this math button that was really kind of cool called random integer. This is kind of a neat one, right? So I'm going to take this 50 out. I'm going to put in this random integer like this. And of course, it's going to get cranky. But watch what's happening. Right here, it says it's moving. Wait a second, it's moving, but it's moving all along that one particular strip. It's a little weird, but okay. It's moving a random number from 1 to 100 around here every second. Get rid of this thing right here, delete, block, here we go. I'm going to duplicate this bad boy, and I'm going to actually override that and take that guy out. So we're going to do that now. Now watch what happens. So now it's picking a random X number and a random Y number and going all over the place. There's one more thing I think you've noticed, though. Look at the look. It's kind of looking a little weak, isn't it? It's kind of all in this upper left-hand corner. So it's kind of living up here. I'm betting if I take my X number and I change my X number to, let's say, 300. Oh, look, now we're getting some movement, right? Ooh, we're also looking at staying largely around the top half. So what if I change the random number here to 500? I could certainly do that. It's going down to the bottom. It's not going all the way down. Never really gets below this. What if I really want to make it challenging? I'll tell you what we can do. It's kind of cool. What you can do is go over to the canvas, right? And you have a setter box right here called height. And of course, if there's a setter box called height, there's also a setter box called width. How cool. So I'm going to pull this one out. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to take a height and a width, right? And I'm going to say set it from 1 to however wide it is. Get rid of that. And I'm going to tell it to set from 1 to however, oops, yeah, that was silly, wasn't it? I see it. I see it. Don't worry. Do you see my mistake? Give you a second. X should be set to width, right? That's going to width, and that's going to height. But now take a look at what's happening, and I'll bring that back in. Now it's going to jump anywhere on the screen, going all the way down to the bottom, all the way on the top. And you're telling it with this block, and that's what you're going to have to tell me in your flip grid, this block calls the procedure, make sure you know to use the word procedure, called the procedure move to. And it picks a random X number from 1 to the end of the canvas, or however big the canvas is, and a Y number from 1 to however high the canvas is, and it fits that. So if I'm using a different device, it will still work, because if I'm using a huge tablet, it'll still work. If I'm using a titchy tiny phone, it'll still work, and it won't get funky and it won't disappear, because it will always set itself to the width and height of the canvas, which is kind of neat, right? Now, when it starts, you really want to make sure that the sprite can start someplace random. So one of the things you want to do is you want to set up screen 1 initialize. So screen 1 initialize, you are going to need this for most of your apps from now on. This is like the default setting. And we actually wanted to randomly pick a spot. So I'm going to go duplicate that. I'm going to say, okay, here's the screen 1. When it's initialized, pick a random spot and start it there. And every second thereafter, drop it to a different spot. And it will always pick an X and a Y from 1, the left top, to however wide and however high the device is. And that will work for all your devices, which is kind of neat. Now, you probably noticed something. One of the things you noticed, because of course we have to refactor, is look at this light bulb sprite here. Move to it. This is exactly the same code that's here. As a matter of fact, we know it's exactly the same code because we copied and pasted it. So we know it's the same code. What are we going to do about that? We're going to, drum roll, refactor. Refactor, we're going to make a procedure. So let's go grab a procedure. And you go in here, look, there's only 2 procedures. And the one you want to pick is this top guy, right? For now, we'll teach you later on. When we get close to the exam, we'll show you how to do the other one. But for now, you're going to pick the top procedure. And I'm going to actually drop this bad boy in here. And I'm going to call this procedure move random. Move random. I want you to notice lowercase move, uppercase random, and those spaces, right? I've got it in there. Why does that matter? Because watch this. I can delete this guy, and it'll warn me. And I can delete this guy, and it'll warn me, that's fine. But if I go over here to procedures, I have a new procedure to call. Move random. Why? Because that's what I called it. I called it move random, so it gave me the option to call move random. I'm going to drop that bad boy in here, and I'm going to drop that bad boy in here. Why would I do that? This is 7 blocks. I had 7 blocks here, and I had 7 blocks there. I had 14 blocks. This is 7, 8, 9, 10. So instead of 14 blocks, I have 10, or sorry, instead of 14 lines of code, I have 10 lines of code. It's not a huge difference now, but two things. One, from now on, when you program, the smaller the amount of code you can use to get the job done, the faster the program runs. So the end user likes that. Secondly, it's a major need on how to do procedures. You have to do procedures really well in your exam. So let's make sure that you know how to do that procedure. Now, let's go on to that's procedural abstraction. What we haven't done is we haven't done um, what happens when you hit the light bulb. Because you see what's happening is I've got this thing going around, and I'll go here and try to click it, which is the equivalent of what would happen if I were touching it, right? If I were in class, I'd be sitting here going, with my tablet, going bang, 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 which is kind of cool. But that's what you're going to do, right? Well, nothing's happening. Well, the good news is you put in a sprite, and the cool thing about the sprite is the sprite has a neat little block called when touched. How cool is that? It actually, when it's touched, it actually does have an X and a Y. And that'll be important to know because when you touch it, it does actually, whatever position you are in, it will actually record the X and record the Y. So when you touch it, bloop, it'll actually say it's a position coordinate, X coordinate blah, and Y coordinate blah. It'll give you two numbers, and it'll put those numbers right in these variables right here. And every time you touch it, it will put the two new numbers in there. So if you touch it at a spot, it records the X and Y, right? Pretty cool. Don't need to know that for this app, but you kind of want to know that because it's going to be important later on. Just trust the old man on this one, right? Then, after you do that, the next thing you want to do is I want to hear a beep. So let's see if we can rock a beep here. So I'm going to rock a beep, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to sound, and I've got this procedure under sound called sound play. We know this. This is simple. I'm going to put in there like this, and we'll slow with my mic here. And if I click off, it's not doing anything as I click off, but as I click on, oops, you got me. And once it gets you, you can do that. Now, that's the simplest version of this game. And another little piece that you can add to this game is you also can have make the sound vibrate the thing a little bit. So if you have this thing called vibrate, you can drop this in here. You can give it a math block of like half a second, and this is a neat little thing. If your phone, um, the tablets I sent home don't vibrate, but if you have an Android phone or an Android device that you use, the Android devices, the newer ones, do have a vibrate feature. So if you drop that little code in, when you hit it, you'll also get a little buzz in your hand. It'll buzz the phone, which is kind of a cool thing. All right. So that's what you got to do to get your tablet together. Now let's check to see if it works. And does it? It does. That's part one. Part two is going to be a lot more interesting, but that's part one. Once that's done, you go back to there, you go to Flipgrid, you open up your Flipgrid, it's going to find you there, join with Google, sign in with your account, and record a response. Make sure you tell me, show me your working app, do a screen record, show me your working app, then show me your blocks and tell me how they work. That's the piece I need to know. Anybody can monkey see, monkey do my code. That's a piece of cake. It doesn't take anything. What the key is, can you tell me what the code does? Very good. All right, good luck. Have fun.